All right, welcome to another deep dive. You ready to get spooky?
Always ready for a good scare, especially with a director like Robert Eggers at the helm.
Yeah, he's not exactly known for lighthearted stuff. From The Witch to The Lighthouse, the dude just oozes atmosphere.
And atmosphere is exactly what you want in a good vampire flick, right? So him tackling a classic like Nosferatu, I mean, that's got to be exciting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The hype's been real for this one. But hype doesn't always equal quality. So what's the word on the street? Are the critics digging it?
Early reviews, I gotta say, they're pretty much glowing. We're seeing a lot of masterful, best of the year, the big guns.
Wow, high praise right out the gate. But, is this just the same old Nosferatu? Or is Eggers bringing something new to the table?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? One thing that seems to be resonating, though, is the way this version handles the female characters.
Okay, how so?
Critics are pointing out a real shift in perspective, especially when it comes to themes of female agency. Sophia Simonello, she's a feminist film critic over at Awards Watch, she mentioned how the film opens with this really striking close-up of the female lead's yearning, immediately setting a different tone.
Interesting. So it's not just about the scares. There's a deeper layer here.
Definitely. Jeff Ewing from Collider, he also highlighted how the film expands on Ellen's character, giving her a much more complex and, well, a bit of a darker psychology than we've seen in previous adaptations.
So it sounds like Eggers is really digging into these characters' inner lives,
Mm-hmm.
using the vampire story as a way to explore these deeper themes.
That's a good way to put it. He's adding layers, giving us more than just a surface-level monster flick.
Which is awesome. But is everyone loving this fresh take?
Well, not everyone's completely on board. Sean Bullman from Fandom Wire, he actually felt like the script lacked a truly unique hook. Like, we've seen so many Nosferatu and Dracula films. He's wondering if this one really stands out from the crowd.
Fair point. I mean, it's hard to reinvent the wheel sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially with a story as iconic as this. But hey, you can't please everyone.
Exactly. Some people just want the classic straight-up scares.
Right. But speaking of what Eggers brings to the table, what about his directing style? I mean, he's got such a distinct vision. Is that coming through in Nosferatu?
Oh, absolutely. The critics are definitely picking up on those signature Eggers elements. David Rooney, he writes for The Hollywood Reporter, he called it a superlative match of director and material. Like, this is Eggers in his element.
I was thinking the same thing. It feels like he's taking the best of what he did with The Witch and The Northman and kind of, blending them together here.
That's a great way to think about it. Jordan Ropp from The Film Stage, he used the phrase ideal marriage to describe how Eggers' horror style and this gothic vampire world just mesh perfectly.
Okay, now we're talking. This is Eggers we're talking about. The dude can get pretty intense. Is it possible there's too much of a good thing?
That's a question that did come up. Matt Donato, he writes for Daily Dead, he wondered if the film might be too brazenly Eggers. Like, maybe it's so much his vision that it could be a bit much for some viewers.
Oh, that's interesting. So we might be looking at a bit of a divisive masterpiece here.
Potentially. Some people love his style. Some people find it a bit overwhelming.
Well, I'm definitely more intrigued now than I was before. Before we dive into the performances and the really nitty-gritty stuff, let me just remind everyone to, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're digging this deep dive.
We always appreciate the support.
Okay, so let's talk about Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok. Is he giving us a new iconic vampire?
Well, from what I'm seeing, the critics are losing their minds over his performance.
Like, what are they saying?
Courtney Howard, she writes for Fresh Fiction, called his performance pure, sinister nightmare fuel. That's a pretty good endorsement right there.
That's intense. I mean, are we talking Gary Oldman, Dracula level, Max Schreck from the original Nosferatu?
Some are even making those comparisons. It seems like Skarsgård really disappears into the role.
Wow, okay, color me impressed.
Yeah.
But what about Lily Rose Depp as Ellen? We talked about how her role is expanded, but how's her performance?
She's getting rave reviews as well. I mean, some critics are even saying she's the heart of the film.
Wow, that's saying something.
Yeah, David Rooney called her performance a revelation. And Dan Bayer from Next Best Picture, he even used the term award-worthy.
Oh, wow, revelation and award-worthy? Those are some serious accolades, especially for a horror film. What about the rest of the cast? Anyone else we should be looking out for?
Willem Dafoe, as always, is stealing some scenes, according to folks like Tessa Smith from Mama's Geeky. And Emma Corrin, playing Anna, is getting praise for the wrenching anguish she brings to the role. That's from David Rooney again.
So, strong performances all around, it seems. But Eggers is also known for his visuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are people saying about the look of this film?
Oh, get ready for a visual feast. The critics are just gushing over the cinematography. Stunning, evocative. Those are words being thrown around.
I mean, that's not surprising. Jaron Blasch, the cinematographer, he's worked with Eggers before, and they just have this amazing way with light and shadow.
It creates such an intense atmosphere, really draws you into that world.
And knowing Eggers, I bet the period detail is impeccable.
You bet. Dan Bayer mentioned how Eggers' attention to detail is just off the charts, and David Rooney specifically praised the costumes and that gothic horror aesthetic. He called it visual intoxication.
Okay, so visually stunning, we got that. But the big question is it all style over substance?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, we've heard about the visuals, the performances, but is there enough story there to keep us hooked?
Yeah, I mean, are we talking a visually stunning but ultimately empty experience?
Not necessarily. Joey Maidson from Awards Radar, he said that, yeah, maybe the script doesn't always give you as much to think about as the directing, but there's no doubt you're watching a master at work.
So the storytelling is still strong, even if it's not super complex.
That seems to be the consensus. Dan Bayer actually had good things to say about the screenplay. He specifically mentioned the dialogue feeling really fresh and how the depiction of the plague that Orlok brings to Wisborg felt, well, relevant to what we're going through today.
Interesting. So Eggers is weaving in some contemporary anxieties, like tying the plague into the whole vampire thing.
It seems that way, yeah. Like he's playing on those fears we all have about disease and societal collapse, adding another layer to the story.
Makes you think, right? I mean, vampires and plagues, they both kind of feed off of vulnerability, weakness.
Definitely a connection there. But, not everyone was completely sold on the atmosphere. Katie Reif from AV Club, she felt it could get a bit much after a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Too atmospheric.
Yeah, she even joked that you start to feel like every scene is just someone, intoning while backlit in front of a roaring orange fire.
Oh, I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Eggers definitely has a style, and it's not for everyone.
Exactly. Some people might find it a little over the top. But it brings us to that classic question with horror movies, right? Is it actually scary?
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Does Nosferatu deliver the chills?
The reviews are kind of all over the place on that one. Some, like Rosa Parra from the Latino Slant, called it one of the scariest horror movies ever. Others said it was more unsettling and atmospheric than straight up terrifying.
So not just jump scares, but something that gets under your skin.
Yeah, more of a slow burn, creeping dread kind of thing. But Courtney Howard, she did warn viewers that if they're squeamish about rats, the third act might be rough.
Oh yeah, the plague. Lots of rats, I'm guessing.
Seems that way. But David Rooney also mentioned that even the jump scares that are in the film are actually pretty effective.
So Eggers knows how to deliver a good scare when he wants to. But I'm wondering, is there something different about the kind of horror he's going for here? Something that sets it apart from other vampire movies?
One critic had a really interesting take on that. Jordan Ropp, he argued that Nosferatu is more about sex than sexiness. Not literally, but in how it explores themes of control and the male gaze.
That's fascinating. So it's not your typical romanticized vampire story.
Right. It's digging into something darker, more unsettling. And Tori Brazier from metro.co.uk, she really loved Lily Rose Depp's performance, how she portrays Ellen's inner turmoil as she grapples with these forces.
Sounds like there's a lot going on beneath the surface of this film. Before we go any further, just a reminder to everyone watching, if you're enjoying our deep dive into Nosferatu, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty more to unpack, so stay tuned.
We love hearing from you guys, so let us know what you think about all this in the comments.
Okay, so back to Nosferatu. One thing that really struck me was the release date, Christmas Day. I mean, a dark, gothic horror film opening during the holidays, that's pretty bold.
It is, right? Rosa Parra, she was totally baffled by it. But Joey Magidson, he suggested, maybe jokingly, that this feel-bad holiday offering could be just what some people are looking for.
I can see that. A little darkness to balance out all the sweetness. But speaking of darkness, remember that idea that Nosferatu might be more sad than scary?
Yeah, the BBC critics' take. Their argument was that since we already know the basic Dracula story, there's a sense of inevitability to it all.
Like we know what's coming, so the suspense isn't really there.
Right. And that makes the experience more melancholic because you're just watching these characters head towards their fate.
Which actually ties back into what Jordan Rupp was saying about the film being about control and the male gaze.
Yeah.
There's this sense that the characters are trapped. by societal forces, by supernatural forces.
It adds this layer of tragedy to the whole thing, and that's what makes it so compelling.
So we've got horror, social commentary, a touch of melancholy. It sounds like Eggers is really pushing the boundaries of the vampire genre.
He's not giving us a simple horror movie, that's for sure. He's using it to explore something deeper, something more complex. And that's what makes it so interesting and potentially divisive.
Okay, so let's unpack those divisive opinions a bit more. What are the critics struggling with?
Well, we talked about how some felt the visual style might overpower the narrative. Katie Reif, she said that while she appreciated the atmosphere, it could get a bit much.
Almost like it's trying too hard to be stylish.
Kinda, yeah. Like some critics just wanted a bit more substance to the story, something to ground all those amazing visuals.
I can see that.
Ah,
And that's where those comparisons to his other films come in. If you're not already a fan of Eggers' style, this might not be the one that wins you over.
exactly. If you found The Witch too slow or The Lighthouse too weird, this one might not be for you. But if you love his world building, his willingness to go to those dark places, then you're probably going to love this.
So it sounds like Nosferatu demands a certain level of engagement from the viewer.
Oh, definitely. It's not a passive experience. You have to be willing to go on that journey with Eggers, to embrace the slow burn, the psychological complexity.
It's not about cheap thrills or easy answers.
Right. It's about confronting something deeper, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
And in that way, it feels like he's staying true to the spirit of the original Nosferatu.
Absolutely. That film was groundbreaking and controversial for its time. It pushed boundaries, explored themes of fear and desire in a way that no one had seen before.
And Eggers is doing something similar here. He's challenging viewers, pushing the boundaries of the horror genre.
And even with the different opinions, the questions about the narrative, it sounds like we're talking about a film that's going to spark debate, inspire new interpretations.
It's not afraid to be different.
Exactly. It's challenging, it's unforgettable. And that's what makes a film truly great. It stays with you, makes you think, makes you feel.
And isn't that what we all want from a movie? An experience that goes beyond simple entertainment?
I think so, yeah. And it sounds like Nosferatu might just deliver that.
I'm definitely even more excited to see it now. And before we wrap things up, another reminder to everyone watching, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives like this one.
We have tons more to explore, so stay tuned.
Okay, let's bring it home. What are the key takeaways from our deep dive into Nosferatu? It feels like this Nosferatu is something more than just a remake. Like maybe it's a whole new way of looking at vampire stories, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like Eggers is peeling back all that romantic stuff we usually see with vampires and showing us something much more primal.
More raw, less sparkly.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, could this be the beginning of something new for vampire stories? Like, will we see more films and books that ditch the whole seductive vampire thing and go for something more unsettling?
I mean, it'd be pretty cool to see a shift like that. You
Sure.
know, vampires have always reflected the anxieties of different times, right? Maybe this Nosferatu is telling us we're ready for something darker.
Definitely. And it's not just about how the vampire is portrayed, it's also about giving more agency to the female characters.
Right, they're not just victims or love interests anymore. They're more complex.
Absolutely. With Ellen and Anna, their roles are expanded, and there's this emphasis on the female gaze, which is pretty unique for a vampire film.
It's like Eggers is challenging us to think differently about these characters and their motivations.
Exactly. He's not just rehashing the same old tropes, he's asking us to engage with the vampire myth in a totally new way.
So what do you think this means for the future of vampire stories? What kind of narratives might come out of this?
Well, I think we could see a lot more stories that focus on psychological realism, like exploring the real toll that immortality takes on a person.
And maybe more stories told from the perspective of, the people who are usually the victims in these stories.
Oh, that's a great point. Like, imagine a vampire story where the main character is not a hunter, but someone who's trying to protect their community from being exploited.
Now that's a movie I would watch. I'm already hooked.
There's so much potential there, right? To tell stories that are both entertaining and make you think.
So it sounds like this new Nosferatu could be a real game changer for vampire stories.
Yeah, it's more than just a remake. It's a chance to explore all these deeper themes about power, desire, and what it means to be human.
Beautifully said. And judging by these reviews, it seems like Eggers has created a film that will get people talking.
Yeah, It's going to challenge us, make us uncomfortable, and probably stay with us for a while.
Well, on that note, I want to thank everyone for joining us on this deep dive into Nosferatu. If you're as excited about this movie as we are, let us know in the comments.
And of course, if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives just like this one.
Until next time, happy viewing.